right, Catholic Josie, what's up? We're back with JOLZ for Jesus. It is the month of July, and in the month of July, we like to focus on our grandparents and our elderly, not only in honor of the feast day for Saints Joachim and Anne, but also because of the beautiful gesture of our dear late Pope Francis. Bless him for instituting the World Day for Grandparents and the Elderly, and that is upcoming. And while we say that, we hope that all of you have been praying with us in our current novena leading up to the feast day for Saints Anne and Joachim. A good practice to build bridges with our elders, especially as young people, and also to pray for them. But before we say anything further, I remain your brother Dylan Naika.
And I'm your brother Pedro.
I'm your sister Kathy.
And I'm Elvira.
Oh, we forgot the drum roll. Elvira's too quick.
Sorry.
Not a problem. Yeah, late one. Special guest. And a special guest indeed. God blesses us with so many special guests. Praise God. God is good. We are here, people. By the way, as you might notice, we're not in the usual office. We are here at the famous Little Eden. Such a special place, blessed by God, such beautiful work happening here. And as introduced, Elvira, who happens to be the granddaughter of the now really famous Domitilla and Danny. We pray to God, hopefully soon to be Saints Domitilla and Danny. So who knows, maybe our July novena will not be Joachim and Anne anymore. It will be Saints Domitilla and Danny Lives. Guys, our very own.
The special thing is, I hope they'll be canonized like together as like a couple saints, because not too long ago on the 12th we celebrated the feast day of Saints Zille and Saint Louis. They are the parents of Saint Therese of the Child Jesus. So the special thing is that they were canonized together as a couple. So I think this is very special because we're kind of hoping that they will be our patron saints, especially for marriage and for couples in Johannesburg. So yeah.
And of course, we married people are gloating right now, you know. And might I say, us lay people, hey guys. Yeah, you're so used to it, like the saints from the past. It was always priests or nuns and that kind of stuff, right? It was very rarely a lay person, and so such good news, guys. Our very own Domitilla and Danny from our very own archdiocese. We are so grateful, and as we say, Holy Spirit activate, come Spirit come. And so as we say, it's JOLZ for Jesus, month of July. We titled it Walk with the Elders. I think you all know by now that our theme is Walk in Hope, in especially Jubilee year of hope. And gosh, you know, there's few things that give us hope like the saints and the people who lived such heroic lives. So we're really excited about today's conversation, to speak to Elvira about her faith journey and what was that like as having such wonderful and inspiring grandparents as she has had. So to jump right into it, Elvira, just tell us some basics about who you are, where you're from, what you do, etc.
Okay, so as you said, I'm the granddaughter of Domitilla and Danny Himes. I'm one of 15 grandchildren. So we're very blessed to have a very big family. I currently work at Little Eden as the care center manager. I was involved with Little Eden my entire life because, you know, we sort of had to be. Whenever there was something happening, we got involved. And I always said I would never work at Little Eden. And I went off to hotel school and did hospitality and worked as a chef for most of my life. And then just before COVID, I decided I needed a change. And now I'm at Little Eden as the care center manager, looking after 300 people with profound intellectual disabilities. And my dream is to continue my grandparents' mission, what they started 58 years ago, helping the most indigenous people, helping those that need help the most, loving them, caring for them, looking after them. So that's what I'm currently doing,
Wow. So how did that shift happen, you reckon? So, you know, that sort of interior position or posture of, I'll never work there. And I don't know, where you feel? Yeah.
Now, when I look back on it, I think my grandparents had something to do with it. I will be completely honest with you, because they needed the family here to continue their legacy. Yeah. But one day I just sat there and I thought, what am I doing? You know, working as a chef, you're working 16 hours a day, you're working 7 days a week, every public holiday, every weekend, you know, when everybody else is partying, you there working. And I kind of just woke up one day and was like, what am I doing? You know, I'm working hard to make somebody else richer, you know, and I've always been a very giving person and wanting to help. And I wasn't actually looking at moving straight into Little Eden. I was trying to decide what to do, and they needed help. So somebody was going on maternity leave, and they said, well, why don't you come in and step in for a couple of months? And absolutely fell in love with working with the residents. So previously, you know, growing up when we helped, it was always sort of office stuff that we did and event stuff, and we helped with the fates, and we helped, you know, in the office and did all that sort of stuff. And when they had street collections and all of that, we helped with that sort of stuff. So I never really worked with the residents. And when I came to cover for the maternity leave, I actually worked with the residents, even though I've known a lot of them because I've grown up with some of them that have been here their whole lives. And I just absolutely fell in love with it. So when the position became permanent, I was like, definitely. And my life has changed. I'll tell you, I am much more, I think, even closer to God. So I've always had a relationship with God, but coming in here every day and seeing the residents and working with them, I 100% can see why my grandparents did what they did. I can see why my grandmother had so much passion for Little Eden and put everything into Little Eden once it started. Because you come into work and you leave feeling refreshed. You leave feeling you've actually achieved something for the day. You feel fulfilled because I know that I've done my best today to make 300 people happy. And when you go home, that happiness comes home with you. So I'll never leave here, that's for sure. They're stuck with me forever, whether they want me here or not. I definitely think I found my calling. I don't think I could ever go back to working in corporate or anything like that. Like I said, I'm pretty sure my grandparents had something to do with it. So it's myself and my cousin Paolo that are still here, sort of involved in the day-to-day aspects from the family. Whereas the rest of the family that have moved away and are doing their other thing, they're all still involved in some way or another, you know, whether it's financial donations or helping in kind or, you know, helping us with different things. So the family is all still involved, whereas Paolo and I are physically here on site every day, carrying out their work. Yeah.
That is so profound. And I think for me, I always, you know, talk to myself. I think a lot. And I think over the past few months, I've tried to kind of figure out what life means and what a person's purpose is. And I've realized that no matter the different paths or fields, as long as it's of service to others, that's where I think you feel the most content. And I think, in a way, you've also answered a part of my question in terms of, you know, so where's your future pertaining to Little Eden? And when you say that you're not going anywhere, I'm like, oh, okay, you've answered me. But I think for me, what have been some of the most biggest highlights and how you have managed to find your purpose and calling? And I'm asking this question in context of, first of all, if you can share with us what is a profound intellectual disability so that you can give us a picture of what it is exactly that you're dealing with. And pertaining to that, how were you then able to find fulfillment in giving back and being of service to the residents here?
Okay, so profound intellectual disability is sort of the highest level of intellectual disability that you can get, which means you're the lowest functioning. So to give you an example, our youngest resident is 4 and our oldest is 69. In December, he'll be 70. Chronologically, our average age is that of a 26-year-old. However, our average mental age is less than a 1-year-old. So physical age doesn't mean anything at Little Eden. It's the mental age. So here in Edenvale, at our Edenvale home, we've got the lower functioning. So the average between a 1 and 3 month old baby, that's where mentally they are. And at Bapsfontein, it's between sort of a 3 and 5-year-old. So they're slightly higher functioning. So previously, our license was for all intellectual disabilities. Then it was changed to severe and profound, and now it's just for profound. So a lot of our older residents, because once they were with us, obviously, even though the license changed, they still stayed with us. So a lot of our older residents are higher functioning. So they're functioning, let's say, at a 5-year-old, 6-year-old level, even though they're in their 40s or their 50s. Whereas now we can only take in profound. So regardless of their physical age, mentally they're basically that of a newborn baby. So they can't feed themselves, they can't bath themselves, they can't dress themselves. A lot of them have got physical disabilities as well, so they can't actually physically move their arms or their legs. They in wheelchairs, they'll never be able to talk. So a lot of them communicate sort of through their eyes. So if you speak to them and you look at their eyes, you can sort of see that they, you know, like a baby does, and you can see that they're now getting happy, or they'll smile, or they're sad and they cry. So that's how you sort of gauge sort of how they are. So that's what profound is. It's the lowest functioning of all the intellectual disabilities.
Yes. And your purpose in terms of finding it, and how is it shaped? Maybe how you feel your purpose is regarding servicing the residents here.
So it just, knowing that I'm coming into work every day and knowing that because of me, they're getting their food, they're getting bath, they're getting dressed, they've got a warm bed to sleep in, they've got a comfortable wheelchair, not only obviously because of me, but because of everybody here. But knowing that that person has got the best life that they can possibly have, that they've got everything that they possibly need, that they're getting the stimulation that they need. Because also we do a lot of stimulation here. There's music, there's the wetlands, there's the horse riding, there's physio, there's OT. So we've got a huge stimulation program. So they're getting as much out of life as they can possibly get. And that's very fulfilling. So they might not be able to go for a walk, down the road and go to the shops and go to a restaurant and do what they want, but they can sit in their wheelchair, they can be comfortable, they'll be fed, they'll be bathed, they'll be warm, they'll be happy, they'll be entertained throughout the whole day. And that's what's fulfilling. I always say to people, I greet sort of, because I see all the residents every day, and I basically get 300 smiles, high fives, and hugs a day. I mean, how can you not be fulfilled after a day like that? Yeah. So, that's how it is.
So we can safely say that Little Eden is a Catholic institution. My question will be on how you then recruit Catholic only or any other person who is not Catholic.
Okay, so we're not sort of registered as a Catholic institution, although we do follow the Catholic faith. We've got a chapel at Edenvale and a chapel at Bapsantine. We have morning prayers. We say the rosary. We have mass every Thursday at Bapsantine, First Friday mass every First Friday here in Edenvale. So prayer and the spiritual aspect of it is extremely important to Little Eden. And when we recruit people, we let them know that. So it's got to be people that will understand that even if they're not Catholic, that they would have to still participate. Like if it was mass and their section, for example, was going to mass, they would need to attend with their residents. They don't have to participate in the mass if they don't believe in it, but they do have to ensure that our residents are still getting the education and the mass and the praying part of it. But generally, a lot of people that want to work at Little Eden are Christians or Catholic. So that is a big help. But just to give you an example, for example, at our Bapsantine home, we've got 3 nuns from India that are there doing missionary work from the Sisters of the Imitation of Christ. And they've been working tirelessly with our staff who are predominantly not Catholic or not even Christian. And during COVID, it was a scary time for everybody. It really, really was. And we sort of all had to isolate in the sections, and the nuns we had more time to pray because we were doing sort of less outside activities, less interactions. We didn't have mass. We weren't doing any group activities, and we spent a lot of the day praying. And to this day, if you walk into our Bapsantine facility, every single staff member is wearing a rosary either around their neck or around their arm, like the bracelet rosary. And they have gone to the nuns and said, can you give me a rosary? Can you make a rosary for me? The staff that have noticed the power of prayer, and especially the rosary, because we say the rosary a lot, at Bapsantine has been outstanding. It has just, the whole atmosphere has sort of changed when the staff sort of realized the power of prayer, because during COVID, we did not lose one staff or resident to COVID. And we have 300 residents and 258 staff members. So we've put that down to the power of prayer, and the staff have realized that. And they now come to us, if they've got problems at home, they will come to us and say, can we pray for this family member, or can we pray for this, or pray for something else? And in fact, yesterday, one of the team leaders came to me and said he walked into a space and he didn't feel comfortable, and he's asking the nuns for some holy water to sprinkle in there. So, even though we don't force being a Catholic onto anybody, it seems that the life that we live at Little Eden and the ethos that we give out at Little Eden, they wanting to become Christian, they wanting to believe, they wanting to pray. And again, another example, our music teacher had to unexpectedly fly to America, and we had mass this morning at Bapsentine, and she normally plays the piano, and she sings and she leads everybody in the songs because she knows what she's doing. And even without her, everyone just carries on. Everybody knows the words. Everybody knows when to sing, the Holy Holy and the Our Father. And everyone just kind of carried on and did it. And these are people that don't attend Mass on a regular basis. They come on a Thursday with Little Eden. So the staff generally sort of embrace the Catholic ethos that we have here. And it's really fantastic to see their faith growing. And some of them have even asked, how can they become Catholics? What is the next step? So we're definitely living out that ethos at Little Eden.
And you said that you're not going anywhere, you still stick with them.
Hopefully.
And at this point, you only have 2 branches, one in Pretoria and one here. Are you perhaps having thoughts of expanding?
So not at the moment. We don't have the space or the money to buy a new property. However, at Bapsentine, we're looking at possibly building another section there to house probably another 25 to 50 people, depending on how much funding we get. We looked at building for another 50 people because there is such a need in South Africa for homes like Little Eden. There are not a lot of homes like Little Eden at all, especially not MPOs. So a majority of them are government homes. There's not a lot of sort of MPOs like us. We are the industry standard in MPOs in South Africa, which we're very proud of. But the bottom line is there's a huge need to look after people with intellectual disabilities in South Africa. So we're hoping to expand. We've gotten our architects to sort of draw up a plan for us, which is going to cost 16 million rand. So we obviously don't have that at the moment. So we're going to look for funding. So if anybody has 16 million rand lying around, please let me know. We would greatly take it. But that would be able to afford us to look after an additional 50 people with intellectual disabilities, which is huge, We've always got a waiting list. There's such a need in South Africa. A lot of our residents so of the 300, approximately 250 are either abandoned or placed by court order, which means they're being physically removed from their families because of abuse and neglect. So it's just an ongoing problem in South Africa that we need to be able to help them and, house them and look after them and love them.
Sure.
I think for me, the interesting story behind how Little Eden started was it was only started with 10 rand.
Yes.
Can you tell us just a bit about that, just a brief history for our viewers in terms of how 10 rand has managed to be this turned or transformed into this huge, very, very important service to people, as you mentioned. Can you tell us how it miraculously got into different transformations and how, or what sparked your grandmother, Domitila, to start it and how her husband, supported her throughout?
So Domitila is from Bergamo in Italy, and she always wanted to be a missionary in Africa. She'd heard about this place called Africa and, about the poor people in Africa. And it was always her dream to be here. And then obviously the war happened and she was sort of stuck in Italy. She met my grandfather in the war. So her mother, who was Elvira as well, who I'm named after, was the housewife, or the midwife at least. And Danny had a boil on his neck and somebody said, no, you need to go see this housewife. She'll help you. And that's basically how they met. Domitila and her mother then hid Danny and his friend Owen in the shed, because back in the days you weren't allowed to sort of look after prisoners. They were escaped prisoners of war. And then after the war, Danny asked Domitila to marry her. She agreed. He came back to South Africa, worked for a year or two, got some money, went back. They married and came back to South Africa. So she came to South Africa as a woman who had never even left her little area of Bergamo in Italy before. And now she's come to a brand new continent. that she couldn't even speak English. Even to the day she died, she still had the strongest Italian accent. Now, we all understood her because we had grown up with her, but other people would talk to her and be like, what language is she speaking? Like, they could not understand her. So then they sort of started having children, and they had 6 children altogether. They had 5 daughters and a son, and she was obviously then busy raising them. But at the back of her mind, she always wanted to do something more. She always wanted to do something to help other people. And she was in a prayer group with a mother that had a child with intellectual disability. And this mother used to sit and, talk about how difficult her life was and how she didn't have time to do things. And that's where Domitilla got the idea to help people with intellectual disability, because this mother also knew of 2 other mothers. And she just saw the heartache that these women went through on a day-to-day basis, where they couldn't go shopping, they couldn't go and do things that they needed to do because they constantly had to look after this child, because people with disabilities take a lot of effort to look after them. So she then got an idea in her head that she was going to help these mothers. She did it for the mothers. She didn't do it for the children. So her idea was to help the mothers, to give the mothers time to be able to look after their other children, spend time with their husbands, go shopping, go to the bank, do all the stuff that they needed to do. So that's where she got the idea from. And when Domitilla has a bee in her bonnet, there's no stopping her. And she now needed to start this place. So Danny said, here we go. Here's 10 Rand. Here's my contribution. That's how I'm going to help you. So that's how Little Eden started, as a daycare for 3 little girls on the 15th of May. So yeah, that was his contribution. And now we look after 300 permanent residents. And it now costs us 60 million Rand a year to keep our doors open.
Yeah.
So yeah, from 10 Rand to 60 million, from 3 to 300, it's huge growth over the last 58 years.
Yeah, well, it's that power of the mustard seed. Eh?
Exactly.
Yeah, the power of humble beginnings. I also love, talking about the power of the mustard seed. I like how you emphasize the power of prayer. And again, particularly the rosary. With our last month's podcast episode that we did, we also felt really inspired to emphasize the power of prayer, and particularly the power of the rosary, the role of our mother in our faith. And so I think, as you even mentioned, the people being so drawn to even go as far as asking, look, can you make a rosary for me? Can I pray? I think that comes back to the power of witness. And I think that's it's something that we often discuss with our young people, or the issue with our young people, of how they're not as drawn to the faith because it's more being preached to them or, I don't know, forced down their throats. But if they see the beauty of it and discover it sort of on their own terms and in their own space, I think it's beautiful. And I'm not surprised at all that you are such a model institution. And I think that's all fueled by the prayers in your community, and no doubt the prayers of your grandparents, who we believe are beholding the glory of God as we speak. Gosh, imagine what it was like for them to just, I can just imagine. And I can just imagine how they're even calling upon God, upon Our Lady. And who knows, maybe the angels and the saints as well, to do all these great little special favors, to pour down special graces on Little Eden. And so you mentioned, for instance, that you've always had a faith in God. But I don't know, are there particular moments that stand out for you in your journey of faith? And I'd say in particular, growing up with grandparents like this who are so passionate, who are so driven, who are, again, witnesses of the faith and not really forcing the faith. Are there moments in your journey of faith that stand out for you, that you really think planted those seeds of faith for you the most?
So definitely Domitilla and her rosary. She constantly had a rosary in her hand. She always said the rosary. And in fact, you get so bored of saying the rosary because, every time you're with her, you have to say the rosary. However, every Monday, all the grandchildren, when we were younger, used to go to her house for Monday lunch. And she used to make lunch for all of us. And then we would say the rosary together. So the grandchildren, it was about 10 of us at the time, and her. And then every single Tuesday evening was supper for the family. And a whole lot of other people would always be invited. There was always a priest there. So every single Tuesday, she would be making supper for 35, 40 people, sometimes more. But you had to say the rosary. So she was very family orientated, but she knew that family or prayer brought family together. So that constant saying the rosary every week with the whole family together, I think just laid the foundation for the majority of us as the grandchildren and children. Saying the rosary is just such part of our daily lives now that it's just like a normal thing. She went to daily mass obviously every single day, and I would sometimes go with her. So we actually lived in the house next door. So you would always see her walking down the road, going to mass in the evenings, and sometimes I would join her, and I'd try go as regularly as I can during the week. I mean, obviously, we always blame life and everything happens, and we're a lot busier now, I think, than what we used to be. So I do try and go because I actually enjoy going to daily mass where it's a bit quieter and a bit like more condensed, and you sort of focus more on the mass rather than everything else that goes on with sort of the Sunday mass. So that going to daily mass has also been a big part of it. But one thing that recently really changed my whole perception of everything that's going on is I was very ill last year, and I was actually in hospital. And the doctors are still quite surprised that I'm alive. They weren't sort of expecting me to make it through. And a friend of mine who actually used to work at Little Eden, she woke up, she didn't know I was in hospital. And she woke up in the middle of the night and she was like, I have to pray for Elvira. She didn't know why, but she's got a very, very deep faith. And she started praying for me. And she saw me lying on a hospital bed. Again, she didn't know I was in hospital. And the next thing, somebody came into her prayer space. And she was like, who is this coming into my prayer space? And she saw my grandmother walking to me and putting her hand on my forehead. She's never met my grandmother. She doesn't know my grandmother, but she saw this woman, and she was like radiating light, and she knew that it was my grandmother. And she put her hand on my forehead, and Annelie was like, okay, that's it. I know Elvira is going to be okay. Her grandmother saved her. So, when you hear stuff like that, 100%, like there's no question, there is a God. My grandparents are up in heaven. They've got power. They know what they're doing, and they've been blessed, and I've been blessed to have grandparents like them. People always say to me, oh, how was it being a grandchild of theirs? It must have been so amazing. And I'm like, they were just my grandparents. I didn't know that other people didn't have such amazing grandparents. I didn't know that other people didn't pray all the time and their grandparents didn't invite them to their house once a week and, feed them. And, we were always there. It was very family. And I think because she was alone, she had moved from Italy by herself to this country where she didn't know anyone. Family was everything to Domitilla, and we were always around. Like our family will celebrate anything that anybody does. Oh, we have to have supper, we have to have a party, we have to celebrate. And that's how it was growing up. And I just didn't know that other people, when you hear that other people never saw their grandparents, I'm like, what do you mean? How is it possible that you weren't close to your grandparents or you didn't see your grandparents? So for me, it's normal. For everybody else, it's extraordinary. But yeah, I'm so blessed to have them, as everybody else, as our grandparents.
What a beautiful way now to bring in the topic of grandparents, because that's sort of like the theme of our conversation pertaining to Pope Francis and making it official. That is the last Sunday of July. We dedicate it to our elders and grandparents. But before we speak generally about grandparents, I think it's important for me personally for us to have this conversation, because it's a beautiful way to also spread awareness of how much we are wanting this cause to happen, hopefully in our lifetime. And so when you talk about this miracle pertaining to your health, is it something that you think you might make it as a form of, I don't know, investigation pertaining to the cause? So tell us, for those of us who are lay people and we don't know much, what is happening now in the Archdiocese of Johannesburg pertaining to us trying to make your grandparents saints, and how far is it, and what would you say are some of those miraculous maybe things that are going on that can lead to this investigation to take place, especially pertaining to your own personal journey?
So there's this whole journey. So the journey towards sainthood is called the cause. So that's why we talk about the cause. So that's the whole journey from where they started to becoming saints. So just before COVID, they were supposed to start the journey. Then COVID delayed everything, and now officially it was launched sort of halfway through COVID by Archbishop Emeritus Buti of Johannesburg. So the first phase has now been completed. So that's when they submit all the original documents to the Vatican and say, listen, we've got these people. We think they should be saints. Here's a brief history and story. And obviously there's a whole trail of paperwork and everything that they have to send. The Vatican then looks at all the documents and goes, yeah, you're right. It looks like there's probable cause for them to be saints. So that phase has been completed. And now that's why we call them servants of God. So now, while they're in the servants of God phase, we now do the investigations. So now there's that whole team that now have to go out and interview people that knew them, family members, people that worked with them, neighbors, people that didn't like them, basically everyone. They take a whole variety of people and they interview them, one for Danny and one for Domitilla. And they then compile all that information that they've now received. And then that gets resubmitted to the Vatican, and they then go, okay, they've interviewed however many people, they're all saying the same thing. Okay, they then become beatified, and then, or blessed at least. And then the next phase until eventually they become saints. So we're currently in the phase where they are doing the interviews. So it was a little bit delayed with COVID and with a whole lot of other things, but now they're sort of now back on track. So for the moment, we call them servants of God, and then hopefully soon they can then go on to the next phase. I agree with you. I really want them to become saints during my time. I think it must just be the most amazing thing ever.
I think
so that's
we'll
why
be grandparents, and I will use my stick.
Exactly, and we will go. We will go. 100% will go with our grey hairs and our wheelchairs. But yeah, so it's obviously the way to fast track it is to get a miracle. You know, that needs to obviously be investigated and everything. So that's why we've got this sort of prayer of intercession where we asking everybody to pray it so that we can get a miracle. That miracle then needs to be investigated, and then from there they can then sort of become saints a bit quicker. So that's how we're really trying to spread the news and spread this prayer to get this miracle, to make it happen a little bit quicker. I know it's very selfish of me, but I mean, I just think I can think of nothing more amazing than to actually be alive when it happens.
Of course. And Blessed Carlo Acutis passed away in 2006. He's getting canonized like literally in September. So anything is possible.
Anything is possible, yeah.
And I remember receiving a phone call from Father Puti, and I didn't know anything about the cause. And then he called me and like, would you want to sit on the committee that are planning for this cause? So he was the priest leading the cause of your grandparents.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, it was beautiful and amazing. He brought a very thick document like this that he compiled and sent to Rome. And so yeah, that's when also I learned about your grandparents and also started becoming interested on their cause. And so anyway, I agree with you. I think it's not selfish. It's something that you just zealous to see happening now and while you're still here, and also maybe perhaps also tell other people that the story about it and all that. Yeah. But we already have a miracle from what you are saying.
Exactly,
Sitting on the hospital. I think that's a miracle that we can, the Vatican can take it seriously and perhaps just investigate on that. Yeah.
And I think it's not even, I wouldn't say selfish. I think Southern Africa needs a saint.
Yeah, we
So
definitely
really need a
do.
saint.
We definitely do.
And we're excited that obviously Blessed, Benedict as well. There's investigations as well. He's blessed. But yeah, it would be nice one day to say there's a saint from Southern Africa. So obviously we're going to be really
And especially a couple. I mean, they'd only be the third couple in the world to be canonized as a couple. So when they've submitted all the documents, they've been submitted individually and as a couple. So they could be individual saints or as a couple as well. So, and I think, as you said earlier, like having that sanctity of marriage, having them as the saints of marriage, and showing people this is what a marriage is, because they did have the best marriage. They never fought. They just got on. And I think it was because they had such deep faith, and God always came first. Always, without hesitation, God came first. If they were going on a holiday, they had to have a place where Domitilla could continue to go to daily mass. Like, that's how God was always first. So it made a huge difference in their marriage, definitely.
I think I get confused pertaining to how or why marriages are attacked, because you always hear about divorces and you're like, but what is it that is so bad that you can't work it out as a couple? Because if you choose one another, surely, I mean, you can make it work together. So I think definitely, Dylan, please adopt as patron saints.
Believe me,
Of marriage.
already on my list. I literally ask your grandparents to pray for many of the intentions that I lift up, because this is a topic on this podcast very often, where we speak about, yes, the power of canonization, of making public, because this is a story that needs to go out there. And I fully agree with you, Kati, that Southern Africa needs that inspiration. And that's what the purpose is of making public. People need to remember that. We often, I know that the divine word has a special place in our faith, but if you start seeing the Bible as an ongoing narrative of how it's not only the saints that we read about in the Holy Scripture, but how that story continues through the saints that we have up to this day. And I think that's what I appreciate a lot about our Catholic faith, is how the saints really are put in a place of, we canonize you, we make you public because people need this inspiration. And so spot on what you say about people need inspiration in terms of marriage, the power of marriage, the sacrament of marriage, to sanctify, and just look at what it did to your family.
Exactly.
How marriage really lived as a sacrament, did exactly what a sacrament is supposed to do. It's supposed to sanctify all around, of course, starting with the immediate family, but how that can just illuminate so many different spaces. And I spoke about your grandparents at the Young and Catholic gathering at Bosco for candidates who are going to be confirmed. And the title of my talk was, as it would always be, is you're called to be a superhero, because I love having this analogy of superheroes and saints, and how they're basically the superheroes, and the source of their power is Jesus. And they have their fellow superheroes, which are the other angels and saints, and Our Lady, of course, being such a superstar. She's the real Wonder Woman, I tell you. And what came to me rather, it's very much on the spot when I spoke about your grandparents, because I had to give a brief history about them also, is I saw Our Lady and Saint Joseph so much in their story, because I see how
100%.
Our Lady was the one called to this great, great mission, which she said yes to, like your grandmother said yes to. And Joseph had the simple call, as we know, he's the silent saint.
Yeah.
He had the simple call of being a supportive, protective, providing, pastoral role.
Yeah.
And it hit me as I was telling these young people about that, and how beautiful that the Rosary and Marian devotion and all of that was so part and parcel, and is, of course, to this day,
Yeah.
of this mission. So what an inspiring story.
Beautiful.
And to add on to about Mother Mary, is so I mentioned that Little Eden started on the 15th of May, 1967. On the 6th of June that same year, Domitilla received an apparition from Our Lady. And I don't know if you've got that picture at the back of your camera there. But
Do a quick turn, Pedro, let people
There,
see.
there.
There we go.
Yeah.
so
There we go.
Our Lady appeared to Domitilla in her home and was presenting her with children. And the children didn't have any color, and she didn't see their faces. And like Mother Mary was ushering these children to Domitilla, and she took that as confirmation of what she was doing was the right thing. So even Mother Mary was sort of saying, okay, we got this, you're doing the right thing. Let's get on with it. And it was through her devotion to the Rosary and to Mother Mary that allowed Little Eden to continue for 58 years.
Yeah.
Pray those rosaries and miracles will happen. And so interesting, again, we're speaking about grandparents. And I'll admit, and I said the same thing last year when we had this podcast episode on grandparents and the elderly, that I am not a model of being a very good grandchild. Grandparents were not a big thing in my life. But the one thing I always tell people about is the one person who did teach me to pray the rosary was my grandmother. And the first time she really taught me is when my sister was born and my mother had to go into induced labor. And she's very sensitive to pain. And so as a 12-year-old son, I need to help my mom. How can I help my mom? But you feel so helpless. And my grandmother took me out of the room and she just said, come sit down. And she took out the rosary. I didn't know it was a rosary. And she just told me, here's how you do this. And she taught me how to pray. And just to recognize how she planted those seeds. She was that model of, mistakes aside, flaws aside. She was that model of faithfully going to church. She was the one always with the sacramentals, of course, including the rosary and the power of using the sacramentals. Today, still in her old age, she's still head of repository for our parish.
Oh, that's amazing.
Isn't it amazing how that sense of
Yeah.
vocation even to draw people to the Catholic faith in that sense? And I think we were in great ways. From what I know from our history, my grandmother was actually the first convert to Catholicism in our family. So it's always beautiful for me to see how that grandparent is that model and that catalyst almost for such a strong faith in the family.
Yeah, same here. And I can also attest to what you're saying, that grandparents play a very important role, especially when they introduce you to the faith. Because it's the same thing with my grandmother as well. I know all the prayers because of her, and I think I also share it, that my love for mass was instilled by her, because every Sunday without fail she'd make sure that I go along with her, tag along with her. And yes, she's also a member of the Sacred Heart of Jesus Sodality. I don't know if I'm going to join the Sodality, but I think also just watching her, go through life the way she did, having to persevere in her own marriage, and there were so many, the way she carried the family, and it was through her silence and her prayers. And I was like, this woman is really a phenomenal person. She's 90 years old this year. She's
that's amazing.
still kicking. She's she's an amazing person. And I think this topic is very important and special to me, because I look at our grandparents and I'm like, these people are so special. And I think as young people, we have to celebrate them as much as we possibly can.
Definitely. Because you miss them when they're gone, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Every single day.
The elderly are here today and gone tomorrow.
Exactly.
Yeah, with me, it's a different story. It's not related to you. We were born like we didn't have our grandparents. Our grandparents was in another country, and we were in another country. So at certain age, then or certain, when was it in 2001? Then they came to Angola. They were in Congo, and then they came to Angola, and lived with us for few. She lived with us for a few months, and then went to our auntie, the elder sister to my mom. And yeah, we would have gone there and visited her and all that. And when you go there, of course, you've got that special treatment that she treats you. She brings the pots that she made food and then serve you, eat. You don't go like this, that. Yeah, then she came back to live with us. And then I left Angola and I came here. And a few years later, and she also started teaching me my mother tongue. Like I don't speak my mother tongue, but I would have just speak few words from her. And I think that's when I really valued presence. And yeah, and then I left. I came to South Africa, and then I think 2 years afterward, I heard that she passed on. And yeah, it was a sad moment. So yeah, but then that to bring me to my question to you: that what roles what role or what roles that do your grandparents or any other grandparent or elderly person around the world can play in the life of the young peoples today and in the church? But
I think they play an exceptionally huge role. I think, you learn so much from your grandparents that you don't learn from your parents. I find, your parents are so busy bringing up the children and making sure that everyone is fed and bathed and the washing is done and taking them to school, that they don't always have the time to teach us about life and everything else. So spending time with your grandparents, you're going to be taught, like you said, your home language. You're going to be taught more about Jesus or about cooking. I mean, I love cooking, and I used to always go across the road, next door to Domitilla, and she would teach me how to cook. And, they've got time. And I think that's the thing with grandparents, is they've got time. So they can teach you so much because they've got the time. And like I said earlier, they're such a vital part of everybody's life. And I really hope that people that are not close to their grandparents reach out to their grandparents and make that connection before they pass away, because there is nothing more sacred in life than having that deep connection with your grandparents, learning from them, spending time with them, hearing their stories. I mean, the stories that they had, we can't even imagine. They always go, oh, I used to walk barefoot, in the snow to school. I mean, it was almost literal like that for my grandmother, because she did have to walk. They were in the mountains. They didn't have a car. If it was snowing, she still had to walk to school. She did have shoes on, so she wasn't barefoot. But, she'll tell you these stories. And it's so wonderful to hear how they grew up. And in a time that, I mean, we've got, our smartphones and our TVs and everything. They didn't have a telephone. They didn't have a TV. They had to create their life that they wanted for themselves. And they play such an important part to teach us other stuff, not the day-to-day stuff. And I think a lot of us have learnt our faith from our grandparents.
True.
Yes.
Do you have any more tips for those of us who are misbehaving grandchildren?
I think I don't know. I think it's colloquial. We like saying that in Zulu, that your elders are idlozi eliphilayo, meaning it's your living ancestor. And I mean, it feels like their bridge is kind of like closer to God, because they have the pearls of wisdom. They have seen it all. They've done it all. They know the mistakes. And I think the best thing you can do for your grandparents, I think, is to give them your time, and to listen to them, and to, I guess, also be obedient to them, because they know what they are doing and what they are teaching you. So I also think, spending as much time as possible is very important, because sometimes we just bemoan how sometimes when we bury our loved ones, that's only then you decide to show them the affection that you should have showed them when they were alive. Sometimes, as with Black people, we see these blankets and all these things, and you're like, when they were alive, did you buy those blankets so that they can be warm? I mean, now it's a corpse, it's cold, but you are putting a blanket on top of a tombstone. So I think those big things that you do post their death, do them now, so that you know that you've done your part in showing them your appreciation to them. So I think for me, definitely spend as much time as you can with them, pray with them, learn as much as you can from them, because everything that you learn from them, you will definitely utilize it for your own life and how you can navigate your faith in life one day. So I think that's my tip.
And then talking about the blankets that you talk about now, I remember there was this other time back home there with with my mom. So I don't recall really very well what happened, but I wanted something to cover myself while I was asleep during the winter time, I think. And I saw this beautiful blanket somewhere there lying there. And I went and asked her for it. She said, like, no, leave it. That blanket, I will give it to my mom. I will cover my mother when she passed on. And I was like, okay. So,
Maybe there's a significant reason that I don't understand, but I'm here to learn. Maybe it's a cultural thing. I don't know. But for me, it's like, spoil them now when you can.
Exactly.
Give them their flowers now, not when they...
I was just going to say, they can't appreciate flowers on a grave because they're not there. Give them the flowers now.
True.
Give them the time now. Spend that time with them. Learn from them. Be with them. They just want you. They don't, when they want to spend time with you, they want to talk to you. Spend it, because the minute they die, it's too late. You can go and you can talk to them. You can go to their grave and visit their grave. You can have a massive funeral and spend tens of thousands of rand on a funeral. They're not there. They're in heaven. Like, it doesn't mean anything.
Negotiating with Saint Peter.
Exactly.
Hey, Peter, let me in heaven.
They're like, please, I tried. But, but I totally agree with you. Like, don't buy them flowers when they're dead. Buy them flowers when they're alive. Don't use the blanket for the grave. Use it for when you're alive and you need it.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. I'm just getting a flood of the many things that God has shown me.
I hope you're going to go see your grandparents now after this.
Tell us about it. Yeah. No, that's a good point you make.
Because you miss them. When they're not here, you miss them every single day.
I was just thinking I should have added earlier when I spoke about my grandmother's role in instilling the Catholic faith, the love of the Rosary of Our Lady. She was so instrumental in my vocation as well, and that resonates a lot from what you say. You're finding your happiness and your purpose in this mission. And shortly after my conversion, I was so in love with Jesus. So every day of my life and every moment was just like, Lord, what do you want me to do? And what was amazing to me was how it was like God chose my grandmother to be the one to send me the answers, to give me like the navigation points of, here's what I want you to pray into and to look at. And I always when I tell people my testimony, I said the word missionary is the one word that really stood out to me the most when I was praying and discerning. And I tell you, she would send me these things that would always have the word missionary, even if it was a calendar, missionary. And because of her, I ended up calling all of these vocational directors, many of which found out eventually that I'm not trying to be a priest or a religious brother. I actually want to get married, but I'm trying to ask God, how can I still serve you in some full-time capacity? And then a few years later, fast forward, I'm already a missionary, and she comes and she gives me a statue of a deacon. And so many people have told me, you'd make a really good deacon. You should really pray and consider. I tell you, it's like nonstop. And I think at this point, I'm like, okay, Lord, I think I get the picture. You just tell me when. And lo and behold, I wouldn't be surprised if that woman, before she passes on to her eternal home, comes and, I don't know, gives me another indication of some sort. So I will say, everybody, I'm feeling really terrible for not being that grandson who calls his grandmother enough, who visits enough, but nonetheless loves her immensely, always prays for her daily, and will continue to do so. So I think at least if you find the initial steps of doing something practical and tangible difficult, pray for them, because in that you open the door to the grace of God to pour in you so that you can take, I think, those further steps. All right. And to wrap it up, we always ask, what's the good news? Your take, just simply because the good news is everything for us. And I mean, it might seem unrelated, etc., but it's obviously not. We've just spoken about an amazing story and to inspiring people, and we all know where that inspiration comes from. So just what does the gospel mean to you, Elvira? What's the good news for you in your words,
in my own words?
Yes.
I think the gospel is just the foundation on which we need to try and live. So if we can try and follow the gospel, just try and be better people. The bottom line is, Jesus said, love one another as I have loved you. He's made all of us in his image. And if we can love every single person, including the 300 people that we look after here at Little Eden, the way that God wants us to love them, I think you're just going to be, in general, a happier person. As you said, the gospel is the good news. If you're following the gospel, everything is going to be good. Everything's going to be better. Everything's going to be happier. And it's just about living your life the way God wants you. So eventually, when we all die, because we're all going to die, that we'll end up in heaven with him.
Amen.
We'll end up in heaven.
We better end up in heaven. After all this work,
that's the good news for me. We will all be in heaven with him.
Yes. And may Damatala and Danny continue to pray and intercede for all of us, and may all of our grandparents, many of whom are certainly with the Lord. I've heard so many people say that, like, believe me, my granny is in heaven. And might I add, I know Mother Teresa was obviously in many ways a spiritual grandmother to so many people. And I had a profound dream once of her giving me a blessing. I kid you not, she blessed me like a priest. I like highlighting that to people. I'm like,
that's amazing.
She blessed me like this. She did this.
Yeah.
And it was the week she got canonized, by the way.
Oh, wow.
And,
so there's definitely good things coming for you, Dylan.
Oh,
definitely.
Hallelujah. And I was so moved by your story, Elvira, where you said your grandmother was radiating with light and she laid her hand on your forehead.
And also, it's biblical that grandparents would also bless their children in the Bible.
Absolutely. It's not only even in today's
Even today.
tradition.
Make it a point to
Yeah.
ask for blessings from your grandparents. Trust me,
Yeah.
like
In the Philippines, when it comes to elderly and grandparents, the tradition there is when you approach them, you take their hand and you put it on your forehead.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's a blessing. It's basically getting their blessing. Lots of good news there. Walk in hope. Walk with the elders. Walk with your grandparents. We love you. Catch you next time.
Bye.